Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. for the Institute for Dialectical Metarealism. Just when you, or maybe I should say me, did not think it could get any worse, it just has. Now, I am not talking about lives. Obviously, this latest Israeli terrorist act did not result in the loss of lives that has been taking place in Gaza. Still, it represents a serious escalation in the war. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you will in just a moment when I read you a story about it. But it is tragic. It is frightening. But it indicates what Israel, the Zionist entity, has been saying that it wanted to do for a long time, especially what Benjamin Netanyahu has wanted to do. There's no excuse for what has happened. And the US is as much, if not more, to blame than the Zionist entity. Because without the weapons, without the money furnished by the US to that Zionist entity, this attack could never have happened. It was purely enabled by American money, strength, and support, and by President Joseph Biden's apparent unflinching support for the Zionist entity. His repeated assertions that he is a Zionist. Okay, now, Joe Biden, you have proven that to us. You have proven to us that you are a Zionist. Do you also want to see the entire Middle East go up in flames? The entire West Asian part of the world go up in flames? The entire Near East go up in flames? I don't know. Is it Biden's increasing dementia? Maybe. Maybe that is a contributing factor. But I doubt that's the main reason. I suspect that it is simply a continuation of the long-standing US policy to support Israel pretty much, with some exceptions, which I remember in my own lifetime, with some exceptions, but basically very few exceptions. And this is certainly not one of those exceptions. So, reluctantly, because I feel like I'm simply repeating this ritual over and over again, and nothing changes. So, what's the point? Israel, the Zionist entity, Bibi Netanyahu, and his gang have made it clear they want to bring down Iran. That's clear. There's no doubt. They've said it. They're doing it. If you attack an embassy or a consulate of another country, it is as if you have attacked that other country. There is no legal difference. So attacking the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria, is as if you have attacked Iran. It may be that it is surrounded by Damascus, Syria, but it is sovereign Iranian territory. And Bibi Netanyahu is not a stupid man. My assumption is that he knows exactly what it is that he is doing, and he simply does not give a damn. Well, maybe that's not right. Maybe he does give a damn, but that damn is for the wrong things, for the destruction of a sovereign nation, on the pretext that, well, maybe Iran has nukes, when it is clear that Israel, as affirmed by many Israeli officials, does have nukes. Pure hypocrisy. I don't know what else to call it. Well, I will stop blabbering now, because I realize that's all I'm doing is blabbering. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for blabbering. So I will put on my glasses and reluctantly read the story to you from CNN. The title of the story: The Middle East on the brink again after attack on Iranian consulate. And again, that Iranian consulate was in Damascus, Syria. The story was written today. The attack on the Iranian consulate in Damascus on Monday, today, may be the most dangerous escalation outside of Gaza since the start of the Hamas-Israel war nearly 6 months ago. Let me pause there for a second. That term, Hamas-Israel war, is wrong. It should not be called the Hamas-Israel war. It should be called the Israeli terrorist campaign on Gaza. Now, is it true that what triggered it outwardly was an attack by Hamas on Israel? Yes. But to me, that is like a prison riot, because the Gazans are being held by Israel as virtual prisoners. And when people are being held as prisoners who have not been convicted of a single crime, what do you expect to happen? Do you expect that people will simply sit idly by and do nothing? Of course not. Of course not. Continuing with the article. Syria and Iran blamed Israel for the airstrike that destroyed a consular building, killing Mohammad Reza Zahidi, a top commander in Iran's elite Revolutionary Guards. The abbreviation for that, which is used throughout the article, is IRGC. And several other officials, including another senior commander, Mohammad Hadi Haji Rahimi. Israeli officials have not commented on the incident. Another pause. If Israel was not responsible, Israel would have said, we were not responsible. The fact that they are not commenting is simply a way of acknowledging their responsibility without coming out and saying it. Now, I don't know what the point of that is, what they expect to accomplish. I mean, who else would do this except the Zionist entity? Obviously, Israel carried out the attack. There's no doubt about that. And no comment is a meaningless statement, but it's what Israel does all the time. It attacks foreign countries, and then when asked, did you do that? The response is no comment. And that's what's happened again. Continuing with the article. The attack is the latest in a string of recent apparent Israeli strikes in Syria that targeted the IRGC and Iran-backed Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. So far, the attacks have not provoked a response outside the scope of months-long skirmishes on Israel's northern border with Lebanon, despite repeated threats by Iran and Hezbollah's leadership to respond to Israel with attacks in kind. Pause again. The reason why Iran and Hezbollah have not responded is obvious, or at least it should be obvious. Iran has nukes, a lot of them. Iran may or may not have nukes, but even if they do, they don't have anywhere near the amounts of nukes that Israel has. Israel could crush whether Iran, Lebanon, or Syria in a matter of moments. And those countries would simply have no way of protecting themselves. So rather risk being attacked by the Zionist entity, they have, I guess you could say wisely, not responded, because the alternative would be worse than responding. And they know it, and Israel knows it as well. In other words, Israel knows that Syria, Hezbollah, and Iraq, not Iraq, Syria, Hezbollah, and Lebanon are not going to respond. Israel knows that, and so do those other countries. And so it's a game of tit for tat. That's all it is. And Israel is always going to be the victor. Israel cannot but be the victor. There's no way that those other countries or entities can win. Continuing. Monday's incidents, however, may be the last straw. Well, who knows? My own comment. Technically, Iran's consulate is sovereign Iranian territory, making this the most overt attack on Iranian soil in years. And Zahidi is the most high-profile target since former President Donald Trump ordered the killing of the IRGC's Story General Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad in January of 2020. Events in Damascus today indicate that Israelis have Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei in a box, wrote Mohammed al-Shabani, who was an Iran analyst and editor at the online magazine Amwaj Media, in a post on X, formerly known as Twitter. Iran's supreme leader is being embarrassed before his own Praetorian Guard and Quds Force will have an increasingly hard time justifying Khamenei's indecisiveness before Iran's regional allies. Yeah, that's true. That's true. It is difficult to envisage an Iranian response that does not involve its most powerful paramilitary ally, Hezbollah. The Lebanese Shia militant group has been embroiled in daily crossfire with Israeli forces since October 8th of last year. For nearly 6 months, it has walked a fine line between trying to limit its field of militant operations to the border area while trying to enforce tit-for-tat rules of engagement. That has become harder as Israel strikes targets much further afield than the border area with growing frequency. Israeli airstrikes hit a major city in eastern Lebanon last week. Only last week. Iran's regional allies say they entered confrontations with Israel on behalf of Palestinians in Gaza, where over 32,000 people, let me repeat that number again, over 32,000 people have been killed, according to local authorities. This has boosted their regional popularity and shored up their political positions domestically. But they have sought to avoid an all-out conflagration. Of course. What else? In other words, what alternative do they have? Because in any conflagration, Israel would win. That is beyond doubt. Israel would win. Continuing. A relief to Washington, which has thrown its weight into preventing a regional war. Again, my own comment. How in the world has Washington thrown its weight into preventing a regional war? CNN. How, CNN? When the US is supplying Israel with money and materiel that is being used in this war, or I guess now you should say these wars. How is the US trying to avoid an all-out conflagration? That I don't understand. I would imagine the US would not want an all-out conflagration. I mean, that kind of situation would be really, really bad, especially for the stock market, especially for big business, especially for capitalism. That would really be a disaster. But what has the US, what has Washington been doing to preventing a regional war? I don't see it. I think you could say they wish to prevent a regional war, but throwing their weight into preventing a regional war would simply mean stop sending money to Israel, stop sending military firepower to Israel, and tell Israel to stop. Simple. Simple. And that the US has not done. Final sentence in the article. That may be an untenable position, meaning preventing a regional war, which has again brought the region to the brink of an expanded war. Well, I guess you could say to the brink, but I would leave out the brink, and I would say it has brought the region into an expanded war. I mean, once you bomb the embassy of another country, in this case, the country of Iran, you have just expanded the war beyond Gaza. So now I suppose it could expand even more. Yeah, sure. It could blow up even more. My concern is not for Israel. Honestly. Now, as somebody from an Ashkenazi Jewish background, as somebody who has people that were at one time, not anymore, close friends who are living in Israel, but they're still American citizens. I don't wish any kind of harm to come to any of them. I don't. I would like to see this whole thing simply go away. The problem is not the Zionist entity per se. The problem is Zionism. Zionism is the problem. Israel by itself, as the Zionist entity, could simply either, I don't know, give up on Zionism or turn Zionism into a kind of cultural Zionism like Martin Buber believed. But is Israel going to do that? No, of course not. Bibi Netanyahu and his coalition of right-wing politicians, which makes up the Likud party and several other parties as well, do not want to see an end to the war. They want to see Israel victorious. But as this article points out, the situation is already beginning to backfire in Israel's face. Because until relatively recently, most other Arabs in other parts of West Asia were not that sympathetic to the Palestinians. That has changed, or at least is beginning to change. No, I think saying that has changed is more accurate. So the Palestinians have now suddenly gone from being the forgotten people of West Asia to being the people that nobody can forget. And so what you have in many cases is a kind of stalemate, maybe a stalemate, between the heads of those West Asian countries and their citizens. The heads of those West Asian countries want money. Israel has a lot of money. So the deals that have been drawn by Israel and the West Asian Arab countries have been made primarily for financial gain on all sides, because all sides have something to gain by entering into economic partnerships. So for the leaders, they want to keep a relationship with the Zionist entity. That's what they think about. They are capitalists. This is the capitalist world system, and they are a part of it. But for many average citizens in West Asia, it is an entirely different story. Take my spectacles off. What they care about are the Palestinians. Now, to be honest, I wish they would have cared about the Palestinians decades ago more than they did. But they didn't. They didn't. They were the forgotten people. Are they the forgotten people anymore? Not really. Not really. So I think, although who knows? Who knows? I think that Israel may have made a serious miscalculation in assuming that because it had these economic partnerships with many West Asian Arab countries, that they could go in and act with impunity against the Gazans and now against Iran. But I don't think that is true, because these dictators, they may be dictators, but they are still to a degree responsible to their own citizens. I mean, if their citizens turn against them, that would not be pretty for them. You don't want to have riots in the streets. And I'm sure that the heads of those countries know that. So the question is, how will they prioritize the situation? Will they place making money through their partnerships with Israel at the top? Or will they place the wishes of their own citizens, which now largely support the Palestinians, at the top? That I don't know. And anyone who tells you that they do know is lying. There's no way to know that. I hope that these countries will place the wishes of their citizens at the top of their agenda and not Israel. Because otherwise, Israel will continue to run Roughrod through the entire region. The process will continue. I mean, Israel has a long list of objectives. Israel is almost like the neoconservative of neoconservatives, the hawk of hawks. They make American neoconservatives look like doves. So what will happen? No one knows. No one knows. And that, in my opinion, is the truly frightening aspect to what we have just entered into with the attack on the Iranian embassy in Damascus. Israel may be convinced that it has the heads of the West Asian nations on their side. That doesn't mean that they do, or that they will for long. So the idea that this may expand into a wide regional war, or maybe even beyond a regional war, no one knows who will enter into this war. I mean, will the United States enter into it? Will NATO enter into it, even though NATO does not cover that part of the world? I don't know. No one really knows, and that is the tragic part of the situation. There are human beings who live in these countries, and Israel simply doesn't seem to care. And so I feel a sense of powerlessness, helplessness, which as an academic, I don't like feeling. I always like at least having some idea of what can be done to prevent a disaster from getting worse. And in this case, I simply do not. For the time being, this has been Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.